Hello. After a while setting up the studio down here, it's been quite a journey, and I'm happy to announce that I'm going to be starting to do a podcast video cast and broadcasting. This will partially be me talking, and it will also be interview style podcast. In today's episode one, I want to talk about why I started podcasting and, doing more video and stuff. Whereas before, I did a lot of sharing interesting things that I found and doing some video of my own. Partially, I wanted to get more in front of the camera and really kind of get more of my thoughts out there, and not just be an echo chamber for other stuff. Although I may still obviously send out things that I find useful and interesting for people. But one of the biggest reasons that I started podcasting and wanting to get into more broadcasting is due to the Charlie Kirk assassination. And it was a decision I made within a few days of his assassination. And it's been kind of a long time coming, but I've been kind of laying the groundwork and again setting up the studio since just a little bit before Christmas. And so that's where things are at. But um, back to the Charlie Kirk subject, there was a very interesting thing that he said that has always stuck with me since I heard him say it. And actually, if I am not mistaken, it's the day that I followed him on social media. But he said he was talking about the woke, and I forget where he was even at, but he was on stage somewhere, and I've seen the video since then. But he says, talk about the woke left and how millennials and Gen Zers are waking up to, the crap ideology of wokeism. And he said, uh, the woke, the left, they have no arguments and they cannot defend themselves. And when he said that, I was thinking about, when I was 33, I came across something called logical fallacies. Many of you are probably familiar with that, but the sad fact is this stuff is not taught in schools today. And I did not learn that in school, obviously, if I was 33 when I came across it. But it's really helped me to iron in the way that I think. I catch logical fallacies in ads, in people talking, and people don't even realize they're committing this stuff, and circular reasoning fallacy. It's just like, some of the stuff is just everywhere. And so, the foundation for truth is in a sense logic, and in a way, you, you cannot be sure of something without the logic, right? And so when Charlie Kirk said this about they have no arguments and they can't defend themselves, I was thinking about the impact logic itself has had on my life, and then having those conversations and those arguments with people. um you know, it's become very clear to me that people are not strategic in the way that they think, right? We kind of grew up, and I know I grew up thinking, I of course I know how to reason. Well, of course I know how to do that. Like I have a brain, right? And it's like there's more to it than that, right? Like logic and reasoning is, and should be a science. And I think that people don't want to take those extra steps. They don't want to learn those things. Well, I went through school. Well, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm talking about. And we see such a polarization in society, and my personal belief is that logic and reasoning have a huge impact on bringing that divide back together, so that the divide is less pronounced than it is today. And you can't reason with somebody that doesn't have those tools, right? You can have those tools all day long, and if you're talking to someone who does not have those tools, good luck, right? And so I think teaching people and holding people to those the standard of logic, and I'm gonna get more into this in future episodes and stuff too, and videos that I release. But I really want to kind of focus back on the Charlie Kirk thing, because we need to have um, the argument in such a way that we can show it and prove it, right? And it's not good enough to just argue what we believe without being able to show that. And, and so when Charlie Kirk was like, they have no arguments and they can't defend themselves, it was like, that is perfect. That is exactly, what I've seen. And so, it really, like, Charlie Kirk's loss was, obviously a tragedy, for everybody. And, well, maybe not everybody, the left doesn't seem to think so, but, us on the right, we, um, yeah, I personally had a lot of, respect for Charlie Kirk and the things he did. And interestingly, like, I saw his stuff for quite a while, and I didn't really follow him just because I think I'm in a different age, um, you know, group or something. And it was like, oh, he's doing this thing with college kids. That's cool, and it turned out to be really cool. Like, I didn't realize back, early on, like, just what an impact he was really later gonna have. And so, but when he said that, I was just like, oh my lands, I think that might have been like 2022, I don't know, 2021, something like that. And um and so, yeah, but that's the day that I decided, well, his assassination was around that time, was when I decided to do this. And so, a thought that I had had recently was that if people were more savvy on logic, and reasoning, perhaps those divides wouldn't be there. And I think it's not just a coincidence that, that we don't have this stuff in our schools. This stuff was taken out in the early 1900s. It didn't make sense to the powers that were at the time, that people know how to think. They want good little workers to, push the factories and things like that, and not people who are capable of figuring out what they're up to. And now we're seeing all this stuff coming to a head, 100 years later, and it's despicable, and it's time to fight this stuff. And we need to, know how to do that. We need to know how to convince people, and we need to know how to make these things stick, right? And being able to articulate things in a way that brings this stuff to light in such a way where people cannot back out of it. Like, that's one of the interesting things about logic, is it ties people down in their mind, to a certain conclusion that logic dictates, right? We don't dictate that. If we try to dictate something that falls outside of the scope of logic and reason and well reasoned, perspectives, then it becomes us violating the logic, and that's something that we cannot do, we should not do, and we must not do. So, if people were more savvy on logic and reasoning, I really do believe that, Charlie Kirk would possibly still be alive. I hesitate to say that he necessarily would, because I think there's an element of evil in, the NWO type thing, that, and this woke ideology, and this, push towards globalization and things, that it's hard to say that wouldn't be the case necessarily, because I think they have it out for a lot of people. And Charlie Kirk was well spoken and could articulate points, and people had no arguments, couldn't defend themselves, and I don't think that they like that. So anyway, I think there are a lot of, kind of looking past, now where we're at with the post Charlie Kirk assassination world. Um, there are a lot of people who were able to get involved and wanted to get involved, and we saw TPUSA blow up with, chapter requests and submissions, and to the TPUSA to get that type of thing going. My understanding is that is a lot of more towards the younger generation. So us Gen Xers, Gen Yers, the older millennials. I hate to, like, put myself in that category, um, but older millennials. So before 1990, if you're born before 1990, that type of thing is, that type of person didn't necessarily align with, their life stage is not in alignment with TPUSA's objectives necessarily. And that isn't to say, I guess, that you couldn't go in and be like a chapter leader as an older person. Maybe you can. But anyways, and so for a lot of people that, wanted to do something, and yet maybe they were not that age, or their target, you know, demographic for somebody they want to speak to is not, a college student. It kind of, there's like a void, that I've noticed. And so for me, like, hopping on broadcasting, that is the answer for that void in my, in the way I see things, at least for myself. Or at least that's one method to get out there. And so it's, I guess it's to each their own, but for me, this is, the thing that I want to do to help um, bridge that understanding. And I have certain things that I want to come out with. I'm working on a book right now that is written but not done. I'm not going to get too much into that right now. It is there's a lot of graphics and stuff that need to be done, and the printing process and whatnot. Um, but I think that this is going to be an excellent thing on my for me personally, just in terms of like self development, getting out there, getting in front of the camera more often. Um, I'm not crazy camera shy, but I'm also not like super comfortable, So it's there's some learning curves, I guess, in that, and so anyways, but without you know dragging this on, because this is going to be probably hopefully one of the shortest podcasts I do. But I wanted to get out today and start talking about it, about why I'm doing this. And I think that Charlie Kirk left an impression on all of us, and I think that making his assassination more impactful involves everybody. Um, you know, it, like obviously the people that assassinated him wanted a negative effect. We've already seen that is, um, for the most part, not the case. There was a lot of positive that came out of the negative. What the enemy intends for evil, God turns around for good, and so that's we're seeing that, and I think that the more people that are able to step up to the plate in various areas, especially areas that align with your gifting, and not being like corralled into a certain mold, or that's exactly what we don't need. We need originality. We need people to be themselves. We need people to show up with their strengths. That's what makes united people better, and everybody showing up where they know they can make an impact, and I think there's, in my life at least, I've noticed that, like, that's not always clear, right? Like, you're not always sure, like, exactly where that's at. I think as we get older, we tend to realize what our strengths are, not care so much what people think, and that stuff becomes a little bit more doable, more readily doable, and that's a part of finding that place is really kind of your sweet spot, I guess. And I hope that I can help people do that, in the content that I produce, and we'll see where things go. But please pray for me, and please follow, subscribe, like whatever platform you're on, whatever the the nomenclature is for that platform. So I appreciate it, and God bless.